My parents didn't show up to my graduation because my sister, who should have graduated the year before but failed, was getting a cheer-up party instead. Now they're calling me the unreasonable one. But my grandparents found out and decided to cut my parents off financially. Instead, they're giving the money straight to me, and honestly, I'm more than happy to take it. My older sister Jackie, who's 24, has always been the family favorite. Last year she was supposed to graduate college, but she ended up dropping out. The college didn't kick her out, even though her grades and attendance were terrible. She quit to chase her true love, music. Apparently, she'd joined a band with college friends in her sophomore year, and it had been going well. But honestly, we all knew it was just a phase and a terrible idea to quit college to be a full-time rock star. I didn't say anything, thinking, it wasn't my place, and knowing Jackie wouldn't appreciate my opinion. The people who should have warned her actually encouraged her to quit and play gigs. She was, at best, an amateur bathroom singer, which was the big difference between her and the rest of the band. The others were actually good. I still don't know why they had her in the band to begin with. Within 6 months of her and 5 bandmates dropping out, she was dumped from the group. They found a much better vocalist who even wrote her own lyrics. This was a huge disappointment for Jackie, and she moved back home with no degree and no future. She tried to start her own band, but no one was interested. Her friends weren't musicians, and people weren't going to upend their lives for her fleeting whims. Since getting dropped from the band, she's been unemployed and living off my parents' money at their house. I find it strange that my parents support this. They think she's been through something awful and deserves a break. I, on the other hand, see it as the consequences of her own choices. I have no sympathy for her. She should have had realistic expectations as a singer. I'm also pretty sure the band she joined in college were all friends from high school, so they were obviously closer to each other than to her. It's unfair that they let her stay home without paying for anything, essentially supporting her financially, even though she's an adult. When I graduated high school, they told me I was on my own for college. This didn't surprise me. I knew they'd made Jackie pay her own way through college too, so I didn't expect special treatment. I was ready to pay with student loans or by working. But then, when I realized they were letting Jackie live rent-free and always making excuses for her unemployment, I saw how differently they treated us. I confronted them about it, and we had many fights. They'd always emotionally manipulate me to get their way. I found it hard to cut them off, but about a week ago, they finally gave me the perfect reason. Last week, I asked them to my graduation party, which is in a couple of days. My campus is only 2 hours away, so it would be convenient for them. But they started making excuses about work. I found it weird, because they could obviously take 1 day off for their son's graduation. I argued with them, and eventually they told me the real reason. They were throwing a party for my sister on the same day. Coincidentally, my graduation day was the day Jackie was supposed to graduate last year. She'd been down in the dumps. Recently, so to make her feel better, they decided to throw her a surprise party. I thought they could still postpone it and attend my ceremony. I expected them to, because that would have made sense. Instead, they told me they expected me to understand why they couldn't attend and had to be there for Jackie. I was in disbelief that they would skip my graduation for a stupid party for a grown woman who made a bad decision and now had to live with it. I hated their decision. Already struggling with my parents, I had a huge outburst on the phone. I accused them of never caring about me, always prioritizing Jackie. I told them they were creating a terrible situation for both their children by coddling Jackie, ensuring she never progressed, and pushing me away, ensuring I'd never trust them again. I called them terrible parents. They still weren't apologetic, saying I was overreacting because it was just my graduation, and Jackie needed them more. I saw no point in talking further, so I hung up. I called my grandparents, hoping they'd attend instead. My mom's parents live out of state, so we're not very close, but I'm reasonably close with my dad's parents. They're the ones who helped me get a student loan and co-signed for me because I didn't even want to ask my parents. My grandparents have always known I don't get along with my parents and have always been sympathetic. They've even tried to explain to my father that treating Jackie and me so differently is unhealthy and unfair, but it never made a difference to him. For me, it always meant more that my grandparents bothered to try and stand up for me, which is why I've always had a good relationship with them. So, if my parents weren't willing to attend, I preferred my grandparents to be there. When I called them, I explained everything, and I was so upset I cried. They could tell I was torn up and started apologizing for letting me down, even though I kept telling them it wasn't their fault. But it was clear my grandparents felt bad about what I was going through. After a while, they reassured me they'd be at my graduation and would make sure my parents paid the price for making me cry, not just this one time, but countless times over the years. I could tell they were serious. They sounded furious. I tried to get them to tell me their plan, but they said I'd find out eventually. I had no idea what they were going to do until I heard it from my parents later that night. A little after 1 a.m., my dad called, immediately yelling at me, calling me selfish, unreasonable, and a drama queen. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I told him to slow down and explain. At first, he refused to believe me, accusing me of acting innocent. But then he finally told me that a couple of hours earlier, after I called my grandparents, they'd shown up at my parents' house and had a showdown. It wasn't pretty. Apparently, my grandparents called my parents leeches of the highest order and Jackie a brainless and lazy cow. It was harsh, but valid. Since Jackie dropped out, my grandparents had been supporting her by sending money to my parents every month. My grandpa owns his own business and is definitely better off than my dad, who had always taken advantage of that until now. My grandpa finally put his foot down because he couldn't let this continue. My dad had apparently been telling my grandparents that Jackie was trying to find a job, but just couldn't find what she wanted, which was a total lie. I knew for a fact Jackie hadn't been looking for a job at all. Every time I went home, she'd just lounge around or go drinking with friends. She wasn't interested in working, and my parents knew that and were fine with it, but they knew my grandparents wouldn't be. So they'd been lying. After my conversation with me, I guess my grandparents decided they weren't going to put up with it anymore. I'm pretty sure they'd already figured out before me that Jackie had no intention of getting a job anytime soon because she was being taken care of by her parents and felt no pressure. She was completely content living off other people's money. Later, when I spoke to them, my grandparents explained that even though they knew Jackie had no intention of getting a job, because it was obviously unlikely that she hadn't found one, in almost a year, they'd still been helping her by sending money to my parents every month. She was still their grandchild, and they didn't want my parents to suffer for her. Anyway, after my father told me my grandparents had shown up at their house and said they were ending this nonsense and wouldn't be sending any more funds, he told me I needed to talk to my grandparents and fix this because it was my fault for making a big deal out of them not coming to my graduation. Then my dad made the mistake of mentioning that instead of sending money to my parents, my grandparents planned to send money to me from now on. That's when I hung up on my dad and immediately called my grandparents to find out what was going on. They picked up almost instantly. When I asked if it was true they were sending me money every month, they said it was their way of making up for everything that had been going on. They said I'd been through enough, and after I graduated, I deserved an easy life. Whatever I did with the money was my decision, but they just wanted me to have it because they wanted to support the right person. I felt strange at first because I intended to get a job and work like normal people do, but then I decided I'd agree to my grandparents' proposition. Why not? I didn't have to put myself through difficulties to be happy, and my grandparents were offering to help. I wasn't going to reject that, so I happily agreed. After that, my parents kept trying to call me, but I didn't feel the need to answer. Even Jackie had been trying to get in touch. The next morning, when I saw my phone flooded with messages and missed calls, I decided to block them all. I really didn't want anything to do with them. They all had one thing to say. They wanted me to fix the issue, saying I was unreasonable for refusing because they needed the funds more than I did. Jackie herself kept claiming she wasn't emotionally strong enough to handle going out and working right now, and was working on herself and healing for a better future. She said I needed to be more understanding instead of being so selfish and materialistic. Update 1. Thanks for the advice and comments. I'm keeping my parents and sister blocked. I wasn't considering apologizing anyway. Reading the comments and talking to friends just reinforced my belief that I was right. I was having second thoughts because I find it hard to stay mad and hold grudges. But it's taken a lot for me to realize there's a difference between holding grudges and standing up for myself. This decision to cut my family out of my life is just standing up for myself, and I think it's the right thing to do. In the past, they always emotionally manipulated me and took advantage of the fact that no matter how often I fought with them over valid things, I'd always come back because they were my family. Most kids are taught to believe that, and so was I, but I was wrong. Their love for me is extremely conditional, and I get that now. I'm no longer willing to function according to those conditions. They can call me all the names they want and be as mad as they want. It's never going to make a difference to me anymore. My grandparents will be at my graduation. Since I know my parents won't show up, I'll still be happy that at least the people who truly love me will be there. I've also finally started opening up about my family to my friends, something I haven't done in a long time. I didn't want my friends to know I didn't have a perfect family because it felt too personal to share. But recently I felt I had to get this off my chest. I discussed this recent situation with a couple of my closest friends, and they were completely non-judgmental. They gave me great advice and reassured me I was doing the right thing. I had no reason to feel guilty and didn't need to let them treat me like a doormat anymore. So that was good for me, and now that I've found the courage to talk to people about how messed up my family is, I don't think I'll be backing down anymore. I refuse to let people walk over me now. Update 2. So my parents did show up at my graduation. It's insane how when I wanted them to come, they couldn't care less. But now that money is involved, they were suddenly eager to be there and calling me family. They didn't have passes, so they couldn't get in. I made it clear I'd only speak to them after everything was over. Once the ceremony was done, a couple of hours later, my grandparents and I agreed to meet my parents. We all met at a nearby hotel for lunch. I told my parents right at the beginning that I didn't want them discussing anything that would lead to confrontation or drama because I was in a good mood and didn't want them to ruin it. But of course, they brought it up as soon as we were seated. They started apologizing profusely for how they'd treated me. Jackie was also very apologetic, but she couldn't come because she had an interview today. She'd started applying for jobs after the confrontation with my grandparents, which had made her realize how lazy she'd been and how she'd taken everything for granted. My parents also admitted they'd messed up badly with me and that I'd been right about everything. They really had been terrible parents to both of us. They wanted a chance to fix things and came to talk to my grandparents and me, hoping we'd hear them out and give them another chance. But before my grandparents could say anything, I told them I appreciated their apologies, but I didn't buy it. It seemed insincere given the circumstances. The fact that it took my grandparents cutting off their funds to make them realize they were wrong was not something I was happy about. I said if they were truly sorry, I'd hope they would wait for me to forgive them, because I wasn't ready to give them a chance to come back into my life right now. As of now, I just want to get a job, work, and build my own life separately from them. They'd caused me a lot of stress and emotional pain, and I just wanted space. I thought I was being reasonable, and even my grandparents agreed, but my parents didn't. They started whining about how they'd really changed their minds about how they'd been treating me and didn't think it was fine anymore. They claimed it was my duty as their child to forgive my parents because they'd always forgiven me when I messed up as a kid. I found that example laughable. It was bizarre to compare my childhood mistakes to the conscious mistakes they'd made as adults with kids. I told them the bottom line was that they'd messed up, and I wasn't ready to forgive them yet. If they were truly sorry, they would give me my space. If they refused, I'd know they were only doing this for my grandparents. Money. I was blunt, and they knew they couldn't manipulate their way out of this. So my mom started crying, hoping it would make me softer. But I dealt with this kind of melodrama for years. It was ineffective now. I just told her to cut it out since we were in a public space and that if she made me uncomfortable, I'd leave with my grandparents. She continued to cry for a couple of minutes, accusing me of being heartless and saying her tears were real, but I didn't buy it. Eventually, I started to get up, and that's when she stopped and asked me not to. Eventually, I guess my parents realized there was no way to talk their way out of this. By then, the food had arrived. They had a relatively quiet lunch and then left after congratulating me without any real happiness in their voices. But it's fine. I don't really care because I have my grandparents by my side, and that's all that matters. I also feel relieved that I spoke to my parents today because I got some closure. I was very proud of myself because I stood up to them and didn't let myself get manipulated like I usually do. So overall, it was a pretty good day. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since I met my parents for lunch after graduation, and I told them I wanted to stay no contact. Now Jackie has started posting against me on social media. I find it really weird that she's so angry when she wasn't even at lunch the other day. Her involvement in my life has always been minimal because we don't get along, so I don't understand why she feels entitled to say whatever she wants about me on a public platform and get away with it. Yesterday afternoon, she made some posts about how I was an ungrateful brat and that she was ashamed of being related to me. I had only blocked their phone numbers, forgetting social media, so I could still see the posts. She cursed me out for how I'd treated our parents and basically ended it by saying if anyone who knew her spoke to me or kept in touch with me after this, she'd cut them out of her life. I found that post totally bizarre. My parents have always done the bare minimum for me, but for her they've gone above and beyond. So I can understand why she treats them like they're infallible or something. But I can't treat them like the best parents in the world because, to me, they haven't even been good parents. I commented on her post explaining my side, but she deleted it. So I was forced to make my own post. Now we are in a social media war. She's been accusing me of being ungrateful to our parents despite everything they have done for me. And I'm just trying to tell my side of the story, which is the truth. Pretty much everything about the recent fight and the situation with my grandparents has been posted by her, but in a way that makes her and our parents look like the victims. I've been trying to clear things up, and everyone who knows us is very confused about whose side to be on. I hate that all of this is public, but I don't have another choice since we have a ton of mutual friends from high school and are close in age. Rather than reply to everyone personally, I think it's better to just put it all out in public. It's annoying and embarrassing, but I have to deal with it. Update 4. Hi, a lot of new information has come to light recently, and I think it's safe to say I don't think I'll ever be forgiving my parents anytime soon. Let alone going no contact for a couple of months, I think I'll be in no contact with them for the rest of my life because of how unfair everything has been for me. It's been 3 days since Jackie made that post, and we've been fighting, nonstop. It's been tiring, but I decided I wasn't going to stop until she did, and I'm very glad I didn't. The fight got to a point where she made a post defending our parents, saying they'd done the exact same things for her as they had done for me, which was a total lie. She claimed she wasn't more privileged than me and that I was playing the victim to get my grandparents to sympathize with me instead of her, even though she'd been through a lot of trauma. She brought up how she'd also had to take out a student loan for college, and would have made the most of that opportunity if not for her awful friends who dumped her after using her for a couple of months in their band and giving her false hopes. She claimed she'd never been able to get over that, which is why she'd found it so hard to get back to normal life and give up on those dreams. That's when one of her old bandmates called her out. They clarified that the rest of the band had always told her she was only substituting because the girl who used to sing with them before college had moved to Australia. They'd never told her they planned on keeping her forever. Even when they decided to drop out of college to pursue music full-time, they had advised and even tried to talk Jackie out of it because, firstly, she wasn't that good, and secondly, she'd always just been a substitute. They wanted somebody better and more serious about music. So when they found their current vocalist, it had been a very easy decision to drop Jackie. And I don't think they had any reason to feel guilty, either because they'd always been very clear about what they wanted, and Jackie was the one who refused to listen or take them seriously. So dropping out of college had been Jackie's own decision, and it was a bad one, which is probably why she'd twisted the story and left out so many important facts to make it seem like she was the victim. And the biggest lie of them all, she and my parents always said she'd taken out a student loan for college. But the same bandmate who called her out also mentioned that was a total lie because Jackie had constantly bragged about her parents paying her way through college for her, while they had to work part-time and hoped for well-paying gigs to pay off their own debts. After her bandmate called her out, Jackie obviously deleted all her posts and pretended like the whole thing never happened. But I know the truth now, and I'm never going to be speaking to my family again. They have lied over and over, and I'm done with it. My grandparents are also going to be doing the same thing, cutting my parents and Jackie out of their lives completely.